Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you're all doing well. In part 3 of my Trinity series, I said that part 4 would be a discussion about hypostatic properties, or in other words, what exactly it is that makes the three divine persons distinct. However, after I published part 3, I received some questions that I think were substantive enough for a new video, which will allow me to cover some points that I didn't get a chance to discuss in part 3. So consider this video, The Trinity Explained, part 3.5. Question 1. How do I define monotheism? Well, brother, I wholeheartedly agree with the definition you were kind enough to provide in the same comment thread. However, the person asking this question is probably presupposing that monotheism could only exist if the nature of God is possessed by one singular person, and obviously I don't agree with that. In the context of Trinitarian monotheism, our view of God's oneness is unique and very sophisticated. Plainly speaking, God the Father, His Word, and His Spirit share the same divine nature that originates from the Father. These three persons are one in essence and are therefore one in power, will, activity, etc. So when we speak of one God, we say that there's one God because there's only one divinity, and this divinity that the three persons mutually share is a divine energy. It's a divine activity that the three persons jointly partake in, and that activity is singular, united, and undivided. This might sound a little foreign to those who are outside of Eastern Orthodox Christianity. However, it's been a long-held traditional view in the Eastern Church that the term God doesn't signify the divine nature. It actually refers to the action or activity that God performs. So for us, the term God denotes energy rather than essence. This is also related to the essence-energy distinction, which has always been a staple of Orthodox metaphysics. But just to briefly introduce it, the essence of God refers to what God is, whereas the energies of God refer to what God does. God's nature isn't identical to the actions He performs. You are not the same as the things that you do. And here are some quotes from some of the pre-Nicene church fathers who demonstrate this view. This view is also famously discussed by St. Gregory of Nyssa. I've included some citations from Dr. Bo Branson's dissertation where he summarized Gregory's view. Dr. Branson says, in this response, St. Gregory follows a very long tradition holding that God does not signify the divine essence, and that, in fact, there simply isn't any word for the divine essence. Rather, he argues, all our words for God, including the word God, signify not the divine essence, but some action or activity, energia, energy, engaged in by God, or perhaps the power or dynami to engage in one of those energies. So Gregory actually thinks that whereas man can be defined in terms of human nature, God is defined not in terms of the divine nature, but as a doer of a certain kind of energy, activity. In other words, God, like shoemaker or rhetorician, is an agent noun. Elsewhere, Dr. Branson says, why is it not strictly speaking true to say that there are three gods? Gregory's answer is that, unlike the case with men, the energies of the Trinity are not divided. That is to say, the actions or activities of the triune God are not divided, they're not separate. This does not mean that somehow necessary metaphysical truths simply work differently for the Trinity, so that when we are talking about God, we will all have a theory of energy types or universals as indivisible monads. But when talking about men, we will switch over to a collective theory of energy types. Nor does it mean that theological language is somehow different, so that when we speak about God, our words follow a different set of rules. It is rather that in the case of men, there are factors which actually do individuate the token actions, but in the case of the Trinity, while the hypostases are individuated by the idiomata of paternity, filiation, and spiration, there simply are no idiomata that could individuate their token energies. In other words, even though there are personal qualities among the Father, Son, and Spirit that make them distinct from one another, there is no quality that separates or severs their actions. So to summarize, the term God doesn't refer to nature, but to the activity that God performs. And since the mode of existence that the triune God partakes in is without space, time, and place, God, His Word, and His Spirit are not spatially separated. The technical theological term for this is perichoresis, meaning that the three persons mutually indwell one another. The Father is in the Son's in the Father, and the Spirit is in the Father and the Son. Be sure to check out part 3 of my Trinity Explained series for a more in-depth and scripturally focused explanation of that. So because the three persons share the same singular divine energy, because they are united in essence, power, will, activity, etc., there's one God in that manner. Many people focus on the detail that the divine persons are one in essence, and that's true. But that essence is not only one, but also undivided. If we say three gods, then that implies three different natures, three different wills, and three different activities which are spaced apart and discordant. And that's not Trinitarianism. That's not our belief. In another manner, there's only one God because there's only one Father. He's the uncaused cause, the chief first principle, and the fountain of the Godhead. The unity of God is grounded eternally within the person of the Father. So because there's that one first principle, that's another sense in which there's only one God. And these are good things to know if you're a Christian who's being questioned on his or her theology, especially when you're dealing with presumptuous individuals like this, who just assume they know what your views are before you even get a chance to describe them. Humility, patience, and respect are truly going extinct, ladies and gentlemen. Question 2. Why doesn't this fall under henotheism? For those of you who don't know, henotheism is the adherence to one particular god out of several. Think of it like this. This is my God. There are many like him or her, but this one is mine. So if the Father is the uncaused first cause, and he eternally generates his Son and his Spirit, how is this not henotheism? Well, I'd basically be repeating myself, but basically the one God, his Word, and his Spirit are not three different gods who exist in addition to each other. They don't think different things and do different things at different times. The Son and the Spirit are not of a lesser divinity than the Father. Their essence is the Father's essence. They don't function independently from the Father. They image him and cannot be separated from him. To use an imperfect analogy, it would be like saying that fire and the light and the heat that the fire generates are three different things that exist separately and independently from one another. But no, that's ridiculous. There's a distinction among those three properties, but if you just have the one body of fire, light and heat will automatically exist. And no one would ever say that those three distinct properties would mean that there's three different bodies of fire. In a similar manner, if you have the one Father, the Word and the Spirit are always going to exist. No henotheism whatsoever. And again, the three persons are not three gods. Question 3. How do I secure monotheism if the Son and the Spirit are the is of predication? For some context, in monarchical Trinitarianism, the Father is the source of the Godhead, as well as the eternal source of the Son and Spirit. He doesn't create them, he eternally brings them about and grounds them. Check out part 2 of this series for that explanation. So the Father is the is of identity, meaning the identity of the one God is the person of the Father, since he is the source. And Jesus and the Spirit are the is of predication, meaning they are God by nature. They are God in terms of what they are. So how do I secure monotheism with this understanding? Very simple. There's the oneness of energy and activity that I mentioned before, but also because there's only one source, and that's the Father. Because the Word of God and the Spirit of God are eternal and uncreated, because they are hypostatically united to God, there is no other nature of which they can partake, aside from the nature of the Father. So because there's one source, and the Son and Spirit are generated by the Father, that preserves the unity of God. Because there's always one person who serves as the fountain of the Trinity. It would be a violation of monotheism if the divine nature originated in the three persons as three joint sources. Or in other words, if the Father, Son, and Spirit were all uncaused first causes, then it would be a violation of monotheism. But that's precisely the issue. There's only one uncaused first cause, the Father. The divine nature and energies originate in him and are eternally and timelessly communicated to and shared with his Word and his Spirit. Question 4. Would I say that the Trinity is qualitatively monotheism or quantifiably polytheism? I mean, should I even answer? I'd just be repeating myself. The Trinity does qualify as monotheism because of literally everything I've stated in this video, as well as in the previous parts. And it's not quantifiably polytheism because the persons of the Trinity are, say it with me, not three different gods. And for that, check out all the reasons I gave in this video, as well as in the previous ones. Almost done. Question 5. How can there be only one will in the Trinity if Jesus had two wills? Will is not an extension of personhood, rather it's an extension of nature. So because the three persons share the same nature, they share the same will. However, with Jesus, in his incarnation, he actually has two wills, because he has two natures. So because he has a divine nature and a human nature, he has a divine will and a human will. The divine will is something he shares in common with the Father and the Spirit, and the human will is something he possesses as an extension of his human nature, and he submits his human will to the divine will. This is because Jesus became functionally subordinate to the Father in the incarnation. Jesus having a human will does not add another will to the Trinity because the divine Logos who incarnated doesn't communicate the divine essence to the human nature he took on, but rather the Logos communicates the divine energies to his human nature. Jesus' human nature does not possess the essence of God. His human will is an individual aspect of his humanity, and his humanity is not his divinity. This doesn't add another will to the Trinity. In part 4, we'll actually talk about hypostatic properties. Take care, and God bless.